Shabbat Shalom. Tomorrow evening marks the beginning of Tisha B'Av. This is a memorial day on the Jewish calendar. It is the day that marks the destruction of the temples, the first in 586 BCE, the second in 70 CE. The sages have continued to attribute other tragedies and disasters of our people to this day, including things like the decree that the Hebrews would need to wander the desert for 40 years after leaving Egypt, and the expulsion from Spain. Many Jews, however, really focus this day of mourning on the destruction of the temple. It is customary to fast and to read from Eicha, the Book of Lamentations. On this Tisha B'Av, however, I will not be mourning, and I will not be fasting. While I recognize that this was a difficult and sad moment in our collective history, I don't believe these moments were tragic. In fact, if it had not been for the temple being destroyed, I do not believe we would be sitting here today in a synagogue in New York City, wearing kippot, holding sidurim, and lighting Shabbat candles. In this week's Parshat Devarim, in the first in the book of Deuteronomy, we begin listening to Moses' speech to the future Israelites. And Moses begins by telling the people God's words. He says, Adonai Eloheinu diber aleinu behorev lemor. Adonai, our God, spoke to us at Horeb, saying, Rav lachem, shevet bahar hazeh. You have stayed too long at this mountain. When the Hebrews do not respond to God with trust and obedience, 40 years of desert life, of waiting to enter Eretz Yisrael, is the consequence. Since wandering and waiting in the desert was not God's original plan, God knows that staying too long in the desert could be a problem. As one commentator put it, there is a danger that the people Israel will grow too comfortable where they are and will be reluctant to move on into the unknown. There are times when our fulfillment as individuals or as a group requires us to leave the familiar and move on toward a goal. God has decided the time has come for the Israelites to move on. It is time to let go of where they came from, of where they have been dwelling, and move forward. It is time to say goodbye to the ways of Egypt, the ways of the desert, to all that has come before. And it is time to find new ways in the next land, the promised land. Rav lachem shevet bahar hazeh. You have stayed too long at this mountain. We are not meant to remain Bamidbar, in the deserted desert forever. God impatiently reminds us we need to go. There is something else waiting for us. After Moses finishes his long speech in Deuteronomy, the Hebrews do eventually leave the desert. They didn't just move on to a new place, but rather they created a new life, one that was rich and full and brought them new understanding, new connection, new community, and a newfound sense of freedom. Not every destruction needs to be mourned. Endings are a part of life, and we expect them to happen. While some are sudden and untimely, others are not. Others are simply sad, while some are tragic. Few endings are truly destructive and final. Most can lead us somewhere new, somewhere we never knew we could go. The pop culture wisdom of Jonathan Larson's Rent reminds us that the opposite of war isn't peace, it's creation. It is destruction that can lead us to create and be creative, which is what the Jews of the ancient world did. They looked at the ashes of the temple, they thought about what they wanted that they no longer had, access to God, a communal ideology, and a sense of purpose, and they found a new way to create it. The destruction of the temple led the ancient Israelites, expelled from their land and far apart, to create rabbinic Judaism, a system of laws and precepts, a calendar with Jewish time and a Jewish rhythm to our daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly routines. A thoughtful, reflective, and open way to access God that needed no go-between and no pleasing odor, and only the words of one's mouth and of one's heart. Rabbi Elise Goldstein puts it, ultimately, the destruction of the temple lent the way for the democratization of Judaism. In our day, all Jews have the authority to be their own priest, to hold holiness in their own hands, to read their own psalms as they ascend the stairs of the synagogue, to lead their own prayers, and even to make their own halachic decisions. We do not need to mourn for a temple that we no longer want. We can remember without sitting in sackcloth and ashes. We can light a yahrzeit candle, honor the past for what it gave us and the glory we have found in it, and then enjoy the blessings of being a modern Jew who has other ways to connect to God that don't involve animal sacrifice and the conduit of a high priest. It's no coincidence that the rebuilding of the people in Eretz Yisrael comes after wandering in the desert, just as the rebuilding of our religious identity and theological constructs came after being flung into exile. When we are broken down and left without all our comforts, we rebuild. In both cases, the early startup nation of Jews took our destruction and used it to create. We created a beautiful, full Jewish religion and community. We said goodbye to our past and what we had, and used necessity to create something amazing and new. After all, without that creation and innovation, maybe we too would have been like all the other ancient peoples and civilizations, merely histories who did not survive the test of time. Just this morning, my 19-month-old son, Micah, grabbed the Lego board off the shelf that my 4.5-year-old Simon had spent a half hour building last night. Of course, despite my loud no and run to stop it, Micah was able to get a corner of the board. Down came the Legos, crashing and scattering apart, colorful, tiny bricks all over the floor. Simon frowned and moaned. "Now it's ruined," he said. In the best, comforting, calming, lemonade out of lemons mom voice I have, I replied, "That's okay, Simon. You can just rebuild it." "I can't," he answered me. "I don't remember how. I'll never be able to make it again." "Well," I smiled, "then I guess you will have to build something even better this time. Something new and something better." It is when we let go of the past and stop allowing ourselves to get too comfortable in the present that we can build a brighter tomorrow. We can remember without mourning. We can commemorate without lamenting. We did not stay in the desert forever because there was something else waiting for us. We do not need to cry out for a temple whose smoke signals and secret altars we have replaced with Talmud and Sidurim. I wonder what will erupt from our consciousness when we let go of and move on from and even destroy the place we are now, the place we maybe have become too comfortable. what will we create?